I think, when you take an aspect of culture and make it inviting, fun, contemporary, relevant to the current world without necessarily like keeping the ethos of it intact, but still presenting it in a contemporary way, that, according to us, that's what makes it cool. It comes really from a genuine place of pride because you're so proud about the rich Indian heritage and culture. So, when when the product or the experience that we come up with also reflects the spirit of that pride, I feel it will attract people, and we are really hopeful that that will also translate that sense of pride to them.
If there is a layer of culture that we feel can be presented better, marketed better, is there an intersection, a new idea that we can create, some fusion, we go ahead and try it.
Welcome to an all new episode of the Indic Paradigm on the Indic Explorer channel, and I'm your host, Vineet. Across the last few shows, we've met a lot of people from different facets of the Indic cultural sphere. And one thing that we've noticed is that the importance of Indic culture and its keeping its relevance with modernity is a very important stream of thought that we've covered in this podcast. And essentially, how do you keep our dharmic culture, its roots, its true core values, and still update the operating system for the modern world, keep it relevant and take it to the next generation? And I think one of the key ways by which this will happen is that when our country becomes richer and prosperous through modern enterprise and capitalism, I think that is when our culture will be able to go to the next level for the coming generations. And two people who are doing a very interesting, creative, and innovative venture are the guests of today's show. And we will talk more about this with them. Welcome to the show, Neel and Charu from Coolture Designs.
Thank you, Vineet.
Yeah. So, firstly, can you, Neel, just give an introduction of, what you guys do? First, basically, the journey as to how you, went about with this venture. How did you decide to start this venture? What was that journey like?
Okay. So I'll start and I'll request Charu to pitch in. I think the journey started probably around 2013 or 14 when we used to work together. So we used to actually work together as part of a same team in a company. And while working on a couple of projects, one of the things we used to speak to each other was how come the frameworks that we use. So both of us come from a learning and development background, and we kept asking each other this question: how come the frameworks that we use are all Western, and how come there is no Indian framework? That was just a question. We left it there, and it was one of those questions that would occasionally come back while we worked on projects. Around 2016, actually, exactly in 2016 is when I decided to quit my job and go full time as a consultant. And that's when I spoke to Charu and both of us, and I spoke to her and I offered that can we create a company? Can we create a company? So up until then, that idea had never occurred. We said yes, we will do something in the future. So one thing led to another. Charu agreed, and we got this. We got this organization started. So took us a while before we came to the name, and I think the name was also Charu's creation, Charu's suggestion of making it cool and culture, and became Coolture and Coolture Designs. All of that is what Charu suggested. So the foundational idea of this was, what can we do to make culture cool? This was just the question that we had asked ourselves, and we started a company. Really, if you ask at that time, did we have a great idea of exactly what we were going to do? I at least pretty sure I didn't. I'm not sure if Charu had, but I'm fairly sure we didn't have an idea of exactly what we were going to do. So what we did was we started with this grand idea of creating a game based on Bangalore. Uh, the game name is called Exploru, exploring the Uru, exploring Uru, Exploru. We started with this idea, and how many iterations did we do, Charu? Two or three iterations, right?
Three.
Yeah, so we did about three iterations. So here's what we wanted to do. So aligned with this problem was, if you look at Bangalore, there is this thing about Kannada is not something that a lot of people even uh, refer to in Bangalore. Bangalore is all cosmopolitan. It is tech hub, everything, but somehow the language doesn't get its due. But approaching it from a you have to learn Kannada doesn't help. So we said, why don't we make this in a much cooler way? Why don't we create a game based on the city using language as a second layer and all that? uh, that project is did not succeed at that time, but now, having spent all these years, we know we can get it. Now we are close to a prototype, but this was the only idea that we had when we started. So this was the idea that we were working with. So that is where we started. And of course then a lot of other things happened, but Charu,
Yeah, I
over
think
to you.
you've like really set the context well. So adding to what Neil just said, it all we come from the business of creating a pull factor for people to learn in a fun way, right? So we both were in professions where we did that day in and out. So I think what when we started thinking about this, I think that was the core thought. Like, how can we in all that we are talking about, Indian culture, or whether the idea that Neil just spoke about Bangalore and Kannada as a language, can we make it fun? Can we create a pull factor to it? Because we saw that there was a lot of push, like you have to learn and you must learn, and we know that learning doesn't happen that way, right? So can we make it inviting for people? Can we um, create it in a way that it is fun and contemporary without hampering, the core essence of it. So that's how it all started. And talking about Bangalore, I think the like he said, that was the only idea that we started with. And it came from a place of pride. I've always been in Bangalore. I'm a native Bangalorean, born and brought up here. And it yeah, there are so many things about the city which I was really really proud of, and it was a way of I think it was a way of creative expression of that. How can we present it to the people of Bangalore and make them see it through a different lens, where they appreciate it for the beauty and the history and the heritage and the culture of it, rather than just looking at it from, yeah, it's an IT city, it's a Silicon City, great weather and bad roads. Can we look beyond that and look at it for its rich culture, heritage, and for the people and the language? So I think that's how it started.
So yeah, just want to add one thing. The moment you hear Charu say this, some people are going to jump and say, oh, but who says we are doing that? Right? Who says we are doing? We also respect the heritage. See, we get it. So that's it. That's the thing we say here. My case is not that you're not doing it or you're doing it. My case is, we think we can add value to it. It's as simple as that. As culture, we feel we can add value, and you will see this getting reflected in pretty much every project we have taken so far. So whenever we take a project, we are not saying that someone is not doing something or someone is doing something. We feel we can add value. That is the only thing that we put forward whenever we take up any project.
Right. And I mean, I want to know a little bit more on this product, because Bangalore in a box, right? I mean, it's like a toolkit when you come into this city. What do you need to know and stuff like that? So, what is there in Bangalore in a box? What is in the box?
Okay, again, I want to actually start it and then pass it on to Charu. This was primarily Charu's idea, and like some of our ideas, this idea, I don't know how Charu got it. I think I or maybe Charu always had the idea, but at some point Charu said, "This is something we can do," and one thing led to another, and we managed to do it. But the reason I wanted to share this here was when it may not when Charu says it, she may not say that it was her idea, but it was actually something that she came up with.
Yeah,
So
I
over
think
to
it
you,
all
Charu.
started with somebody reaching out to us and asking us suggestions on, there's somebody visiting Bangalore. So what's really famous in Bangalore that we can gift to this person? So they are not native Bangaloreans, but we want them to know or take away a piece of Bangalore with them. I think that's how it all started. Like, hey, we there's so many things which are cool about Bangalore and about the city and about Karnataka as a whole. So can we curate a box of experiences, like not just things, but also maybe even edibles on what's famous in Bangalore. And so it is not a standardized box to your question on what's there in this box. We made it like a customized box. So if you have a friend visiting you, or if you want a Bangalore in a box, we send out a form. We ask a lot of questions about who is going to be using it and what do you know, what's your connection with the city, etc. And we curate the box and we personalize it. And Neil and I actually write a letter to this person. We make it as part of the box. So to give you an example, we have the famous avrekal mixture in the box, which is not very well known for a lot of people. So if you go to VV if you look at the season where you get this avrekal, and there's a big mela which actually happens called Avre Mela, and the mixture that you get is like really, really famous in Bangalore, and I don't think you get it in other parts of the state. So that's an example of an edible which is there in the box. But there are a lot of other things like Channapatna toys and some the set of postcards which talks about the city, a book which talks about the city, a frame which is painted by a native Bangalorean, which has the photograph or a painting of Bangalore maybe 50 years ago. So knickknacks like this, which actually gives you a glimpse of the heritage and culture of the city.
So the reason we are able to share all this with you, that this is what goes into the boxes, we know for sure in the next box none of these things
True.
will be there. Will be there. So it is a surprise. You only get a budget. So we ask you for a budget. This is your budget. Whether it could be 1,500, it could be 5,000, and this is the person you're giving it to. This is what it is. So we ask you a bunch of questions and we create the box based on that. So the receiver and the person who orders both have no idea what is going in it. So they have to trust us that they will get a box of Bangalore. And I think in two instances, we got a request to make it a slightly larger canvas. He said, make it a box of India. So we did that for a couple of clients as well. So it is a purely customized
Yeah.
Wow,
And
that's interesting.
yeah,
No,
just
go on.
wanted to add that we got this really special request from a girl who was getting married to someone who's not from Bangalore. And when she filled the form,
Oh,
she had actually said, this person really loves coffee. So one of the things that we did is we included coffee powder in the box, which is called as Billy Who, which is made from someone who is from Bangalore. So there are like roots and connections like that which are kind of invisible and not very explicit, but it's all explained in the letter that we send. So yeah, it's all customized, like Neil said.
that's, I think the curation part of it is where the real value of this lies in, right? I mean, I'm sure you would have heard that a lot from the people who bought this. But largely,
Yeah, and Charu is a Bangalore specialist. Charu knows, I think, nooks and crannies of Bangalore that I don't think too many people would know. So
oh,
I'm not a native Bangalorean. I've been living here for 20 years, so I'm as good as a Bangalorean. So the person who knows more about the city and culture is Charu.
oh, okay. And between the two of you, how do you divide responsibilities? Like, which is your department? And
I will go first here. So usually I come up with the basic idea, and then Charu asks me thousands of questions, which effectively take it back from the castle in the air that it was to something at a very fundamental level that look, everything is missing, so you have to go back to the drawing table. So this is where it starts. Then we do some more iterations and the idea takes better shape. Once the idea takes shape, all aesthetic decisions after that are with Charu, because left to myself, I don't have a great idea of color. I think everything should be minimal and black and white and all that. So after that, it is Charu who decides what it should look like. And after that, I have no role to play except, no, I won't say I have no role to play, but these decisions are taken by Charu. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, wait, now don't come in here. I'm going to do what I want to do.
I think it's
okay,
just being modest. Uh,
Charu is the boss.
no, it's just being modest. A lot of our products are really Neil's brainchild, and we actually have a sheet full of ideas, all kinds of ideas, more than I think 100 plus ideas from the time we have started. So he is really the ideator, and we also, I think, share very unique strengths, and we complement each other's strengths really well. So we come together, and when we ideate, we believe that it just becomes bigger and better. So I think that's what it is. I think we both are very passionate about the ideation part of it, and not so much the go to market and the business part of it. So we many times don't know whether it's good or not. We I think we have a lot of fun creating it, and then it takes a lot of push to take it to the market and do something out of it.
Charu is also extremely creative. Both of us are creative. We are
Mhm.
creative in slightly different ways. But and as she says, both of us are creative. Also, it means that there is a certain operational part that we are not great at. So that's one place where we have to really stretch to make it happen.
Right, right. I think you have a vendor in Mumbai, right, with whom you operationalize the.
Yeah, I was about to add to that, that thankfully we have such great partners who make up for that lack of operational expertise. Like ThoughtPot is the partner in Mumbai that you're talking about, who have proved to be great partners in making and executing a lot of ideas that we come up with. And there are many more such partners.
So they call themselves dreams to design. So we go with the basic idea. They're able to see it in the way that it will reach the market. So a lot of our products, and as Charu says, right, we would have thought of it up to a particular level, but really from there to take it to the market takes a lot of work, even in the basic product. So they ask, so as we work with them, we look at it and say, okay, what do we need to do? How do we make it better, and so on and so forth. Maybe if we have time, I'll show you, one of the places where the change has really affected in terms of what it was before and what it is now.
Sure. But I want to ask you this because this is an important question for your business, right? We operate in a very dynamic environment, and I think the essential problem for uh, Indian culture, Indic culture, is both parents are working in big cities. There isn't much time. Joint family system is obviously moving towards nuclear families. The kids are getting deracinated. So, what is your generic thought on these social changes that are happening? Uh, I wanted to pick both your brains on this issue.
So I think the way we see it is, I think, okay, I don't think we see it from this big problem lens at all, Vineet. We see it in a very small way. We see it that what if we made XYZ cool? What if we made XYZ attractive? What if we innovated on XYZ? So our philosophy really is build a better mousetrap and the mice will come. I mean, for lack of a better analogy. So we believe that if we create something, the market will happen. Like I said, this also reflects on our own thought process. Our thought process is really creativity first. So while what you stated are all problems and they're all real, our approach has been a much more humbler approach. To say, look, here is something we are creating. Hopefully the market will like it, and maybe in due course some of these things will get solved. So we really put the idea first here when we work on something.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. That's not really the lens that we at least start with, and we hope that the final outcome is going to touch that problem that you're talking about. But yeah, that's not where we start at least. And if we have to
Okay.
take an example of the recent product, which is Deva Basha, I'm sure if it is reaching some young kids who really want to learn the language in a fun way, it is going to create, I'm 100% sure that it's going to create that aha for that kid. And that difference and that aha is what is very gratifying for us, and that's where we want to make a difference.
And just to build on what Charu said, right, that AHA actually makes a huge difference. You think of it, you have a Sanskrit game. And what if that game looked as good as any other game in the market? Let's say you compare it with an international game that's come in the market, and one kid gets this and one kid gets another. You look at it and say, wow, that is interesting. I want that. That is the pull factor that we are looking at. Whichever product we, so that's why while we were joking around about this whole thing, the product has to look good. The product has to be good. You cannot sell a substandard product and expect this problem to be solved. So we are very clear that the product we bring in the market will be high quality, will be desirable, will create that aha moment. Because without it, it will not even reach the stage where kids, parents, grandparents, whoever it is, wants to buy it and buy it for themselves or even buy it and gift it.
Yeah,
Right.
and we have the biggest critics right at home. Like Neil's kids were the first ones to, test the product and give all kinds of feedback, which helped in the prototyping and getting it to the final stage. And when we actually launched it, they were the ones who were standing there confidently explaining and doing the demo of the game to the rest of the world. So, I think right there is the impact for us.
Nice. And there's an entire section I've kept for Dev Bhasha. But before that, what are the other products you have? I saw something about Antakshari and even some handcrafted jewellery. So Charu, is there like, can you like talk about those things? What
Yeah,
other
sure.
products you have?
I think I will let Neil talk about the Antakshari bit, but I could talk about the wearable heritage or the Parampare series of jewelry that we created. Again, this goes back to how we used jewelry as a mode of expressing some aspects of our culture and heritage. That was the series, and it was really an experiment. We partnered with this wonderful designer called Divya, and she has this brand called Jewels of Soyuri. So I was just brainstorming with her, and I was telling her that there's really nothing which actually is core to Karnataka and the state, and which talks about the heritage and the art of the state in a jewelry form. Like, of course, you have your traditional gold jewelry, which are very very like if the dolki jewelry, for example, is very very native to North Karnataka, but we don't have something which is very contemporary, which we want our modern men and women to wear and flaunt, which is probably rooted in culture. That was the thought it started from. So the entire series, we had about, I think, 25 designs, one piece each design only, and everything had a story of the rich culture and heritage of Karnataka through the design itself. Like whether it is the fabric, like ilkal, which is used as part of the jewelry, whether it is yakshagana as the art form which is used in the pendant, or whether it is the temples of Karnataka, which is again used in the jewelry. We also did, I think, one piece which was a tribute to the greenery, the whole Lalbagh and Kaban Park of Bangalore. So all of this were our way of expressing through jewelry the rich culture and heritage of the state, which was a big hit, and it was one of our first few products, and we sold out in no time. And there's been requests even now to kind of recreate it and redo it. But yeah, it was an experiment when we did it.
Yeah.
And Neil, about the Antakshari?
Yeah. So just to give you a slight, uh, you know, a slight peek into the way we look at things. So I tend to look at something and say, what can we create as a product out of it? Charu looks at something and says, what can we create? It could be a product or an experience. So somehow, when I think of something as for me, experiences doesn't come very naturally. I somehow don't think of it. So usually, when we think of it in these two things, Charu is one of the people who says, "Have you thought of it in this direction?" So just to give you a glimpse, because this jewelry, looking at all of that, all of it was her idea and execution to take it in this direction. Even to make it one off was something that she said, "This is what we are going to do. It is not something that we will offer on a contiguous basis. It's an experiment." So coming back to what you asked, now I'll just give you a glimpse into how these ideas even arrived. I was traveling with a set of fairly young people to Chikmagalur, and none of these people were talking to each other. So, and when we used to travel, we were singing, you're doing something, you're playing Antakshari, and we said, hey, why not create Antakshari in a box? So that is how that product came about. It was a very simple question. Antakshari focused on the love of words. Keep it small as a travel pack that people can use and use it while they travel, get together, or something like that. So this was how Antakshari started. 108% Indian, our creativity card set started because a client asked me while I was running a design thinking session, and the client said, "Can you make an ideation tool?" And for somebody like me and Charu, we don't need ideation tools. We think we are creative, right? So we don't need an ideation tool. So when the client said make an ideation tool, my first instinct was to Google and find out what are the ideation tools in the market. And there was no Indian ideation tool. Just that one thought, and I said, can we not create an Indian ideation tool? So that's how 108% Indian was born. So really, it's a problem statement that appears in the market. Hey, something is missing. Can we create it?
So, moving from there towards your key product, Dev Bhasha. But before that, I have a question. Uh, a lot of what the product is involves the Sanskrit language, right? And Sanskrit language knowledge is very low in India. Like, not many people actually. We do speak a lot of Sanskrit words in our everyday languages, in our regional languages, in Hindi, all of that, unconsciously. But if you were to just present sentences or a paragraph in Sanskrit, not many people would understand much, right? So, did you see that as a challenge before you speak about Dev Bhasha? Did you see that as a problem to monetize your product?
So again, like I told you, and it's interesting that you asked this question immediately after I told you how at least playback and 108% Indian were arrived at. Uh, so a little bit of background. I've been a fan of board games for the last many years. So which is why in my house we have a collection of 50 to 60 board games. And if you look at the good board games that exist in the world, none of them are Indian. Don't count Ludo and chess; they are centuries ago that were created by Indians. Now, of course, there are a few more players in the market who have been doing that. So this thought has been running in my mind that why can't we create a good Indian board game? So this has been a track that's been running in my mind for many years. I think Charu's been at the receiving end of this idea for a while now. Um, and I started learning Sanskrit in 2017. And I told myself, I think there is possibility to make a game out of Sanskrit. So this is all. There is a track that says you have to create a good board game. Sanskrit, I started learning Sanskrit and they said we should make a game out of it. In 2019 is when there was a toycathon. The government of India put out a request for people to submit ideas, and I submitted this idea on creating a Sanskrit game with exactly 3 slides. So really, if you look at it, to answer your question first, did we look at this at the market and say, will this happen, will this not happen? No, we looked at it and said, there is a chance to make a board game out of Sanskrit, and we want to do it. That was so we really, I think we didn't start with market analysis in this case. Earlier, at least, there were problems that came in the market. This one was more, we said, hey, there is a competition, Sanskrit and board game, we can do it. This is the time to do it. And I just put an entry over there. Luckily, it so happened that the person who teaches me Sanskrit, Dr. Swaroop, and another student, Savita, the three of us started working on it. So Swaroop is the Sanskrit expert here. He's the one who's got us the language, and we have two more scholars who help us at various stages. But to be fair, and to answer your question again, what we said was, what if the person buying the box did not know Sanskrit? What if I could teach you Sanskrit without having to know Sanskrit? You only need to know Devanagari script. What if you could play the game out of the box like you played any game? Not the easiest games like a snake and ladder and Uno. It's a little more 1 degree higher complexity, like typical board games that you buy from abroad. What if we added that level of complexity and we said, out of the box, you open it, you can begin to play and learn the language? That was the question we asked ourselves. We didn't look at it as, is there a gap? And we said, this gap is the reason why we want to create it.
Got it. So tell us a bit more, Charu, on Dev Bhasha. What, further, like once you've decided that you want to do something like this, uh, how do you approach this, and how do you, like, the whole designing process, how do you take it to the market, the whole 9 yards?
Yeah, I think Deva Basha is really, like I said, Neil's brainchild. So I think he should tell you the entire
Okay.
story of how the things panned out to from an idea to product.
Right.
So I thought of it as a card game. And of course, I wish I could show you what we had here. I'm not sure I have those here. But I actually used these blue sheets to draw the concept and show it to Dr. Swaroop and said, this is how the game looks like. Until then, he did not really understand what the game was. I mean, nobody can. If you're not thought of a game and Sanskrit, it's a unique idea because nobody has really thought of it. So I actually remember making this first on a card and showing him, here is what it will look like. When you join 3 such blue cards, you will get a sentence. And he said, oh, that makes sense. So now go ahead, let's do it. So we started off by, and by the way, in this whole thing, cannot forget Harsh Pandya, McMutton project. He's the person who actually illustrated this whole thing. So the initial thing was to create subject object verb and say every subject object verb will give you a combination. Now this was easier said than done because in Sanskrit you have declensions for every verb that are part of the verb. So the word conveys the grammar. The grammar is not, unlike in English, all these prepositions and all don't sit outside the word, they sit inside the word. So getting this right took us a while to actually say, what will that combination look like? How do you play it outside the box? So everything in Sanskrit grammar had to be imagined, rather reimagined as visuals, colors, pattern matching, and without having to make a mistake, which means you could never tell the audience that if you combine the star, diamond, and circle, you're making a mistake. So every star, diamond, circle will give you a combination. So this part had to be communicated visually, gamified. All the rules are based on Sanskrit grammar, but that grammar layer is invisible to the player. The player doesn't need to worry. You only need to say star, red diamond, circle, star, yellow diamond, circle, star, purple ring, red diamond, yeah, red ring, and circle. You only need to think in that. But once you play this a few times, subliminally, this things goes into your head. You realize that, okay, red means something, yellow means something, green means something, and then when you look at that, the grammar tables and all that, it becomes so much more easier. So you can think of it as your introduction to Sanskrit in a very fun way. Imagine you're sitting around and you're playing, and you play this game, you make sentences, you steal points from everybody. One, there is a visual pattern and a color matching element. Second, there is competition. Three, there is fun, and there is also a learning element. When you do all of this and then you say, hey, you know what, I think I want to learn this language deeply, this is what we hope happens. And this is where when the box is opened, people say, wow, this is cool, I want to play with it. Of course, from opening the box to playing takes a little while. They have to go through a little bit of the rules and all that. Like I said, it is not out of the box easy. It takes a little while to get used to it. But once you cross that layer, you can actually have fun with the family, learning with each other. There's also a solo play mode. But the whole objective here is to make that first step of learning the language easy as possible. Once this happens, then yes, you're free to take your journey deeper into the language.
Correct. I think that's a very important point you mentioned, because sometimes what happens is that people are so stuck in those core essentials that they forget that, these things which makes things easier to assimilate actually funnels people in for higher learning. That's a very important, that's a very important point that you mentioned. And yeah, I'm going to get my pack of Deva Basha very soon after this podcast is over.
Oh, you still haven't? Okay. We should have checked.
Yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, the larger crux of the question around which you've had this discussion and the discussion with Sai Deepak and Sridhar Vembu as well. And I wanted both of you to chime in on this. How to make culture cool? What is your take on it?
I think, when you take an aspect of culture and make it inviting, fun, contemporary, relevant to the current world, without necessarily like keeping the ethos of it intact, but still presenting it in a contemporary way, that, according to us, that's what makes it cool. It comes really from a genuine place of pride, because we're so proud about the rich Indian heritage and culture. So when when the product or the experience that we come up with also reflects the spirit of that pride, I feel it'll attract people, and it will make them wonder, okay, what is this? And I also want to experience it, I also want to try it. And we are really hopeful that that will also translate that sense of pride to them.
Yeah. So I think one of the things we don't do very well, and I know I'm making a statement when I say this, is that we don't market our culture very well to people interested in it. Sure, we are done well in some parts. This is not a generic statement, but if you look at something, there are things we can definitely do better. So let's say, for example, you go to a historical site. Going to a historical site in India versus going to a historical site abroad. Just look at the way they market those places, right? So that is one of them. So if you look at that and say, hey, what if I marketed Hampi better? In fact, Hampi is probably not a great example because Hampi gets a lot of visitors. But stay with me for a moment. What if you marketed Hampi better? What would that look like? And better doesn't mean others are not doing a bad job. Better just means when the two of us talk, hey, what can we do here? I just want to make that also clear. So if you marketed it, maybe you will think of something and something and something and so on, and you will build something out of it. So this is one. The second one, and just to take off from what Charu also mentioned, you can get new ideas. That idea will occur at a very different intersection. So, for example, if you look at 108% Indian, we have always used metaphors for creativity. It is there all around us. You look around India, there is an instance of creativity every 100 meters you walk around. What we did was combine these two. That is an intersection. Sanskrit has always existed. Board game and gaming principles have always existed. We combined the two and we created Deva Basha. So these are intersections. Even if you look at our Explorer, the game that we spoke about, there is the city, there is the language. This interaction combined in a gamified manner might give you something. So we just approach it and say, hey, is there something we can do with it? So my limited point here is, if there is a layer of culture that we feel can be presented better, marketed better, is there an intersection, a new idea that we can create, some fusion, we go ahead and try it. So, and again, as Charu says, the idea here is not to tamper the original. All of that stays. We don't intend to mess with all of that. But what if I showed you something that was as cool as anything else in the world?
Yeah, and I think it's also a way or a method of storytelling, if you will. You know, if I have to take an example from from the dance world, because I'm also a classical dancer. There's so many shows these days which presents an entire production as a story. I can talk about the recent production which happened called Abha, which narrated the entire story of Ramayana and Sita, and what happened when she was taken away, and that whole story in a dance format. And there was the entire auditorium was filled with youngsters who are not necessarily from the space of learning dance. Like maybe there could be some percentage of them who were students, but it also attracted non-dancers and non-artists, only because it was presented in a contemporary way, and it kind of invited them to see that storytelling in a different way. So it's a way of expression which attracted people who are not already part of that space. I think that's also kind of our intent. Like there are people who are already into the culture and the heritage and all the things that we're doing. They're already anyway following and doing things related to it. But there's also a big section who are untouched and who probably are not following it or not attracted to it because there is no coolness element to it, or it's not fun, or it's not inviting. So we want to really tap into that audience and create something contemporary with that, and also present that story in a creative way. I think that's really the intent.
So I think just a couple of things to add to that also, right? I think one of the things we are clear about from a very, very foundational principle lens is, we will create our we will there is whenever we work on something, there will be an element of creation in it. So very rarely will you find us reselling something. That is not our job. Our job is not a distribution role. Our role is to create something, create, recreate. And that's why we welcome collaboration, because we know when two teams come together, you'll always end up creating something. And that is one of the discussions that we often have with people also. Hey, what can we create together? So our journey is really one of creation, looking at something and say, what can we do over this? And again, as Charu rightly pointed out, it is about attracting more and more people. Can we make Sanskrit interesting? So for example, if somebody buys 108% Indian, you get a glimpse of 108 different things from across the country. And every time you read it, you're like, oh, I didn't know this existed. And we don't give you so much information that it's all there, but give you enough information to make you curious, go and find out. And hopefully that will lead you into understanding the country better. So to just take one example over here, let's say you have a client who comes from abroad. Very often, what do we show them? We show them auto rickshaws, we show them cows on the street, and then we say, oh, this is what we do. But what if you presented India as a box of metaphors, and what if they took them back with them to their own country and began to look at India in a metaphorical way as a place that is very creative? And again, as Charu said, they may not know so much about India, but this is one way for you to make that happen. So know about India and be creative in the process. You're developing a different association.
I think that's a very interesting thing. It's like a flavor of the culture which makes you dig deeper, right? Like, and have you had any foreign tourists or people coming from abroad, like buying into some of these things? Like, has it been essentially Indians only? Like, or has there been any gifting or something like that? I think there's a lot of potential in that space, right?
So I think BID we actually, few of our earliest BIDs went to non-Indians, requested by an Indian. They had clients coming in, so that BIDs went over there. 108% Indian. We have had a couple of people take it abroad for demonstrations and all that. Yeah, other thing is we have not really figured out shipping outside India, as it's been a bit of a question mark. So it only happens when people come here and they request it. So the shipping has to happen within India. And we hope that people will pick up 108% Indian as gifts to their clients when they come to India as well. It is unique, and yeah, we hope that people will do that. So yes, that is definitely an intended
I think
target
even
Yeah,
Dev
audience
so
as well.
Bhasha had a lot of requests
Yeah.
from people outside India. Like Neil said, our roadblock right now is shipping, and I think once we figure that out, hopefully we'll be able to cater to that audience as well.
absolutely. I think there is a huge potential amongst foreigners as well who are seeking to know a little more about India, and also NRIs. I think there's a lot of potential in these two segments. But what was your target market? What kind of clientele customers have you seen? Like, is there a specific age group? Have you seen older people also, get this, or is it just parents buying it for children, or how is it like generally the client base?
So Deva Basha has seen a very, very interesting mix of people. We have had a lot of old people buy it for, I won't say old, but people who are interested in learning Sanskrit. So that is the demographic, and that has cut across age groups. We have had people who are on the older side buying it for themselves because they were appearing for a Sanskrit exam. Then we have had people on the younger side who have bought it because they want to know about it. People have bought it for gifting. So that is Deva Basha. 108% Indian has been mostly a corporate-ish audience, people who work in the space of brainstorming and creative thinking. But we've also had a lot of people being very curious about it. People in the coaching space and all that. People have bought it. So it's between a. I think if you were to see this from an MBA lens, you could turn around and say, "Have you really identified your target audience well?" And that answer for that might be, "Well, we haven't thought about it so deeply." But to go back to what Charu said, if you're interested in Indian culture, do take a look at us.
Right. And any sneak peeks into future products or experiences that you guys are thinking about curating?
That's a wrong question to ask us, because at any point when you ask us, we are working on 100 ideas in our heads.
Anything
It
close
is it
to
is it
anything
is
close
just
to
that a lot of
fruition?
them. Yeah, we will. Oh yeah, yeah, I'll get you there. But I'm saying, if you ask us this question today, we'll have 100 responses of what all we can do, and a lot of our conversations also tend to be like that. And then we have to say, wait, we need to see what we can achieve, and then we'll get there. So the short answer to that is yes, lots of ideas. But two things that we are thinking of is, one, we have been thinking of a Deva Basha level 0. That is, it is there at about a 70-80% prototype stage. This is one level before. We still don't know what is the name we are going to call it. That's one thing we were thinking of. We are also thinking of Expluru, which is which now that we have learned Deva Basha, it gives giving us a different lens to look at Expluru. So Expluru is close to the prototype stage. So these are the two things I have in mind from a product lens. Charu has been talking about a bunch of experiences that she's been having
Yeah,
in her mind.
I think even this Exploro also we want it to be like a product slash experience thing, because I feel like it has that potential. So you're exploring the city, and like the non maybe the unexplored parts, the cultural parts of the city. And so there is a element of food in it, there's element of culture, there's element of language. So these are the three different things, and I think that can be an experience as well as a product. And we're really excited about that, because there's so many iterations, like Neil said, that we have. And we have right now all the content for the prototype, so we want to give it a push and take it to the market. The other experience that we've been thinking about is, very similar to what I explained to you about the whole dance thing, right? The concerts, the music concerts these days. I remember a couple of decades ago, maybe people used to sit patiently listening to a 2-3 hour concert. But now I think that audience is like really dipping. If you go to any of these Carnatic classical concerts, the number of audience is very, very less. So one of the things that we want to do there in that space is to deconstruct a Carnatic classical concert. So to almost like a music appreciation experience. So take people to the concert, but before taking them to the concert, actually give them a glimpse of what to look out for when you actually go to a concert. What happens there? How does it start? what are the nuances to pay attention to, and how do you actually appreciate and enjoy it? And then, getting them back to have a conversation about it. So we want to like create a little more awareness, and maybe get a new set of audience to appreciate concerts. That's one idea which we have right now. So yeah, looking forward to see how it
This
shapes.
is a very, very interesting concept. I think, yeah, I mean, I'm on board on this one, definitely. Like, because I think first you teach about the art appreciation, the art aesthetic, maybe tell a little bit on the rasa theory and all of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then, probably they understand different stages of a Carnatic song. And, like, I think with the knowledge, the appreciation is far easier.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's an amazing concept. I would love to experience this myself when it goes. Like, if there's a beta testing on this, then
Sure, we'll keep that in mind.
consider me in for that. But with that, we come to the end of this conversation. It's been a fascinating chat with both of you. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, Neel and Charu. And Neel would definitely like to have a second conversation. We discussed about it, as well, to
Sure.
delve deeper into certain aspects of design in the product. But it's been great chatting with both of you.
Sure.
An amazing conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Vineet. Been a pleasure chatting with you as well. Before the conversation, we were wondering what sort of questions you would ask and what should we say and all that. But you made it really comfortable, and it was a pleasure. It felt like it just felt like a lovely conversation flowing.
And all the
Absolutely.
Thank you so
best for
much.
your podcast, and hope you get more and more such stories to share.
Yeah, absolutely.